All right, let's get to Cardi B here and her thoughts on the world. So she posted...
You were so excited for this segment.
Well, I love Cardi B. I genuinely love Cardi B. And I even forgive her. She has like some cringe takes on taxes.
Yes,
I don't even
good
care.
Takes on taxes.
I don't even care. I'm just going to put that to the side because I love Cardi B. And she went on, what was this, Instagram Live or something?
I think so, yeah.
And she went off. This was like a 10-minute diatribe. I personally recommend you watch the whole thing, but we pulled some of the highlights. This has to do with Mayor Eric Adams and massive cuts that he announced to a bunch of like social spending, education, libraries, police even. This was supposed to be the fund the police guy. He's cutting the police budget in New York, and also sounding off about Joe Biden and the various wars that we have involved ourselves in. All right, so we're gonna play this for you. Warning, kids, earmuffs, out of the room, whatever. There's a lot of language here. Let's take a listen.
I'm not this year. Don't ask me. I don't give a f the resume that they send. I don't give a f I'm not endorsing no presidents no more. Because how is there a $100 million budget cut in New York City for schools, library, police safety, and sanitation? Yeah, Joe Biden's talking about, like, yeah, we could fund 2 wars. We could fund 2 wars. Motherfuckers talking about we don't got it, but we got it. Like, we're the greatest nation. No, the f we're not. We're going through some shit right now. Like, say it. Say it. We're really going through, we really are f right now. And yeah, we talking about we could fund 2 wars. That's like a nigga trying to front like, yeah, I got the money to support 2 bitches, but you really don't. Y'all talk about y'all don't make negotiation with the odds. Well, y'all need to sit the f down with these people and find agreement. No, we cannot fund these wars. We can't. Keep it a bean. We can't. I told myself this week, like, yo, the internet right now is too dark because celebrity drama, of course, we love it. We infuse with it. We watch it. But it's like, yo, that's little of what's really going on in the world right now. That's nothing compared to what's going on in the world right now.
So she's going off about cuts to the schools. Actually, at one point, she brings up the cops and she's like, well, I don't really care about the cops. But then she goes on to talk a lot about the cops and how crime's going to be through the roof. And they cut the sanitation budget. There's a whole piece where she's talking about how rats are going to take over the city. She's also talking about, then she throws in Joe Biden, says she's never going to endorse another president again. We can't afford these wars. We got to get out of these wars. What's your view, Emily?
She's channeling everyone. You know, it feels like there are basic things that we used to be able to do as a society that, like, we cannot perform the most basic functions of a city, of a country right now. And I'm not trying to like overanalyze this, but I feel like that's actually really what she's talking about. Like, again, this is the quote. She says, how is there $100 million budget cut in New York City for effing schools, library, police safety, and sanitation? And Joe Biden is talking about, like, yeah, we could fund 2 wars. We could fund 2 wars. And actually in the daily sort of political discourse, one thing I think it gets lost, but you guys do a great job focusing on it, is where our scores from education are, and like the rapid drop in scores that are coming out of like students' performance over the last 5 to 10 years. They're shocking. They're staggering. And so, yeah, for a lot of people, they look at a $120 million budget cut in New York as she's talking about schools, public libraries, and the police department. I don't give an F about the cops, but like it is what it is. Like New York City, again, feels like it's unable to perform basic functions, but so does the country as a whole when you're looking at, again, 2 wars. Also, another thing you guys have been good about focusing on, when you look at the numbers of money that we've sent to Ukraine and you compare it to our normal budget, our normal like foreign aid in other places, the amount of money that we spend on things here in the United States, like it's staggering how much money we have sent to Ukraine. It's like truly a shocking number. Even when you follow these things closely, you look at the number, it's shocking. And so, yeah, when you look around you and you feel like your government, that you are, this connects to her position on taxes. You know, she's gets a huge chunk of her paycheck taken out and then looks at budget cuts and sees rats running around the city. And it's like, well, if that's how a multimillionaire feels, how do the rest of people feel when it's like, I'm paying 30% to the federal government, I'm paying X amount to my state government, depending where I live, and we can't even teach kids math?
Yeah. Well, I honestly have never been more sympathetic to that. Obviously, I think the rich should pay their fair share, and the tax rate is regressive, and all of that stuff like still stands that I've always stood on. But I am very sympathetic at this point to that instinct because, yeah, you look around, you're like, wait, my tax dollars are going to fund 2 wars? My tax dollars are going to...
That nobody declared war on, by the way.
Right, that's right. I didn't get asked, nobody got asked about that. My tax dollars are going to support, giving Israel more bombs to drop on babies in Gaza? No, no, I don't feel great about paying taxes for that when we don't have health care, right? So there's a few things here. Did you watch Cardi's comments about FDR?
Yeah, she loves
we covered
FDR.
that here too.
Yeah, she loves FDR.
I love Cardi. But yeah, she went on this whole thing. She got asked a question about like, oh, what did you think about, when you got a cheese sandwich with David Letterman or something like that? And she was like, that wasn't the thing. The thing was, let me tell you about FDR and Eleanor and how much I love them. Like, she's clearly she's politically engaged, right? This is someone who cares about history. She endorsed Bernie. Like, she's not just sort of, a bystander, not taking in what's happening around the world. So I want to put that out there. But in addition...
She's pretty smart.
Obviously. Yeah, obviously. I mean, I love Cardi. Again, she's incredible. And I think I think that's why people really take note of some of the things that she says politically. But there's also just a real normie sensibility here.
Yeah, 100%.
That just lands with like, you can't fund the frickin' schools, but there's no limit over here whatsoever. And, a lot of times, sometimes I get kind of depressed about like the state of America, et cetera, but, oftentimes I feel like if we had just random people running our government, it would be way better than the decision-making that comes out as it is. And she says that at one point. She's like, these leaders, like, they're terrible, effectively. Like, these leaders aren't it. So in fairness to Mayor Eric Adams, I did some digging here about why these budget cuts are happening, and what he would say and argue with some validity is that there is a huge number of migrants. There are a huge number of migrants who are coming into the city. New York has a policy that, they have to provide shelter for everyone. Many of these migrants are coming from Venezuela, although it's from a range of different countries. This has genuinely been a real challenge for New York City, just given the numbers. But I did some digging into the actual numbers here of the projected budget gaps and how much the cuts are versus how much sheltering migrants cost. This is from the Fiscal Policy Institute. They say that the city estimates the total cost for asylum seekers over 24 and 25 is about $11 billion. The city's portion of that cost is about $9 billion. About $2.5 billion of that has already been budgeted in the adopted budget, so that puts the city's new funding need at $6.5 billion over the next 2 years, $2.3 billion in 2024, and $4.1 billion in 2025. So the amount that it costs, if you're claiming that the whole problem is just the cost of sheltering migrants, the numbers don't add up here. They are cutting way more from the budget, from things like schools, sanitation, and the police budget, by the way, then it actually, the migrant cost actually makes up. So anyway, there you go in terms of the numbers, because I did want to dig in here and give the full picture of what was going on in New York City as best I could.
Yeah, that's actually very helpful. And the normie sensibility, again, I think a lot of people are increasingly going to look at policies like New York City's and San Francisco's, and in fact they are, and say, well, the price tag of budget cuts is the price tag of being a sanctuary city. That is to say, people wouldn't be flocking here, Texas wouldn't be sending people here if it wasn't a sanctuary city. And so essentially this is the policy that's costing us X amount of money. And I believe that to be true. You talk to migrants, and they say they specifically go to sanctuary cities. And of course, it makes sense. It's perfectly logical. But that's a question Democrats like Eric Adams increasingly need to have a good answer for. And obviously, we've seen him start to split with party orthodoxy, specifically mayors of some big Democratic cities, including here in D.C., start to split with the party orthodoxy on illegal immigration as soon as it kind of came to their streets at the level that it does to, Brownsville, Texas, or some of these border towns that are rural and lack a lot of social capital, and in some ways because of this. But Krystal, I really think that is trickling into like normal people looking around their city in a way that, budget cuts typically come from Republicans. Republicans are typically the ones lowering taxes and typically the ones that, want less money into, the education system, et cetera, et cetera. So Republicans have to answer for this all the time. On this particular part of it, that's increasingly going to be a problem for Democrats. And Cardi didn't connect the dots totally, but she sort of started to. And you reminded me of the William F. Buckley quote when you said, like, people are looking around like, who are these idiots running the government? Like, he has a great quote where he said, I'd rather entrust the government of the U.S. to the first 400 people listed in the Boston telephone directory than to the faculty of Harvard.
Well, New York City is a city of immigrants.
Hell yeah.
Right? And their self-conception is a city of immigrants. And so even with the strain that the number of migrants, have brought to, just the ability to shelter them and be able to school the kids, especially now that you have huge budget cuts coming to universal pre-K and to education overall, there still is a pride in being an accepting place for
absolutely.
People coming to the country.
And I think that applies to the whole country, too.
I totally agree with that. And I think it especially applies in a city like New York, just given their self-conception. But there's no doubt that cities like New York and places around the country have been failed by DC. And the fact that they have been unable to, come up with any sort of sensible immigration policy. And one of them, with a lot of the immigrants coming to New York being from Venezuela, I mean, one thing you can really clearly point to is our sanctions on Venezuela and the way that has contributed, not the only factor, but contributed to economic chaos, which has forced people to leave. That's one thing. But the other thing that you can really point to is, many of the people who are coming to New York and other places, they're asylum seekers. And they deserve to have their asylum claims adjudicated in a reasonable period of time. And that's something that Americans should expect as well. And so part of why this becomes a problem is because if you're seeking asylum, it can be years before your case is ever heard.
Oh, yeah.
And this should not be controversial that you have a surge in sufficient immigration judges to be able to clear this massive backlog of cases so that, people are able to, by law, have their claims heard and adjudicated and decide, is this a legitimate asylum seeker or not, and go through some sort of orderly process. So I don't dispute that New York City and the country as a whole has been failed by the fact that there is no real, sensible immigration process in place that is rule-based, that is, expedited, that has some sort of reasonable semblance of order. I don't doubt that at all. But with regard to Eric Adams specifically, the numbers that he's claiming of, what they have to cut versus what they actually are spending on migrants don't add up.
And just to bring this full circle, your point is so right. And I was at a migrant respite facility in, I think this was in Brownsville, Texas, and talking to some Haitian migrants a year ago, and was looking at the papers that they had been given from our government. Their asylum hearing was for years. It was
right.
Like, I'm looking at the paper and the asylum hearing is in 2024. And it's just like, well, they're like, we don't even know if we have a work permit. It was unclear to them whether they'd be able to work. And it was actually really unclear in the paper. And that, to bring this full circle, is that we cannot perform basic functions as a country anymore.
Yeah.
Because of Washington, D.C. This is downstream of Washington, D.C.'s completely Byzantine and poorly managed systems and our inability to actually make decisions about, for example, what our immigration system should look like when you have policies, decades of failed policies in Central America that are pushing people north. What do we do? How do we fix our decades of failed policies in Central America? Then how do we fix our immigration policy to deal with that? We cannot perform these basic functions anymore. We just can't. And it's causing problems all the way down.
Yeah, that is a great point. All right, let's go ahead and bring in our great friend, Ryan Grimm. We're going to talk about the incredibly wild new president of Argentina, who he is, what you should know about him, why it matters to you, and how we got there. Let's get to it. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.